Hey guys, MKDH here. You might remember that a month ago I had been absolutely agitated about everything in my parents' house, including my dad's ashes being popped in the door and then dumped. Or at least, that was the legitimate conclusion I was working under. And so what the sympathizer I mentioned in one of my community posts about this. And by the way, the sympathizer just yesterday gave me some of the items that she herself salvaged, including an animal fuel statue made of resin, as well as a chessboard also made of resin, and generally involving that old, more interested art style with the chess pieces. The sympathizer is absolutely acting in good faith, so there's that. If you're wondering, the sister of mine from Sacramento paid me a visit on Friday, showing me a dirty container with what else but the matches. Of course, obviously, I wouldn't want to personally handle it just in case. And giving to me an old Apple computer in a tattered box that had an address on it, involved with Activision, and she was citing for historical purposes. And she had me wanting to sign it and consent on selling my parents' house. I signed as such on benefit of the doubt after expressing wanting her to do something that would have been concrete proof of what she was trying to sell. But my confirmation was at 97%, although later after seeing the mailing address on his box, it did go up to 98%. But this was a situation where I would very much have preferred 100%. Well, funny thing about that address on the box, and just last night, I looked at the documents I obtained in my final salvage operation. Something I never even mentioned, and I barely asked the involved auto driver for a witness to as much. And I ended up finding a business card that my dad had as a software engineer for Activision, and he had just matched. The address was already stunning. It only required the search engine isn't spring knowing what exactly the search for in the first place, and it was on the line and I set up for a month. This is concrete, and you can get some very good news from that. This said, after everything I had to go through, I still had to make a video about this. I need to say this first. The sister of mine, who handled the legal stuff that caused everything to go in the container that the sympathizer and myself both believed had come to the dump, she had been needlessly aloof, so that caused me, as well as the sympathizer, to electric so much confusion in the first place. If she was being a JWAHOG, then here's my message to her. I've been there, done that, and it's not fun, nor does it even do anything to work. Here, I was still dealing with denial of critical information. I had every right to know. What really happened to all the items in my parents' house isn't exactly the first case of denial of critical information at that. And better care towards me would absolutely have given me something to work through. Given how immobilized I was in general by my resources from hard bed, it definitely shows to me to be disconnected between things, given stuff involved with the repair shop were hired up would make sorting processes less bothersome with them. But this is the clearest one, especially when the sympathizer turns out to have been friends with my parents as is. The whole situation already had its share of clear-cut bad-faith actors. The ex-landlord is one of them, especially with him having been a dictator about who I could and couldn't talk with, where I was having to hope he'd be giving me something to work with for better communication. And I can cite that I do very likely have liaised with the sympathizer so much faster, which would have saved me a lot of trouble if he had cooperated instead of exploiting me for income. It was a nightmare where the people that were just siding with him and even ignoring that he increased my rent like 25% within a year at one point. And then he was trying to get anything constructive done on next door, which wasn't happening thanks to a troll who continually false reported me. I was lucky my most about the police brutality was noticed by a friend of the sympathizer before the post got filtered thanks to the troll's false reporting. And dear God, the police brutality! I called the police over under the impression that my dad's ashes were going to be thrown out in negligence by the workers. When I had already had my own papers on me for showing myself to be the registered owner of the house, something that would even later come to me informed of the damaged sewer line with demand priority response. Why would I slam onto the ground, by all indications dragged on the street, and along it, from the front yard, in my pocket items and being spread along the street's concrete within any indication, until I pressed down into suffocation, and eventually, when I was double mad, which would have elated the breathing problems that I had, and ended up with a dry mouth to get out of it. The police additionally had the gall to lie by claiming me to have assaulted them, ending up with me going into something called a 5150 when I was in the hospital, which itself was not a fun experience. Well, now I couldn't even use my Oh, and by the way, mental health aid turns out to suck. They don't care about complexity, nor do they care to document any items that could be important. What do I expect when the very next day there's a YouTube video about 10 police in West Contra Costa thinking that a guy with no firearms requires a whole lot of them use guns in California because clearly there isn't such a thing as riot shields! This sort of thing is why I'll put the video on $100 promotion. I was actually intending for a more complex video than this too. I'll link to the intended video script in the description. The script was last edited on April 30, and I intend to keep it that way for authenticity, especially showing the confusion I was under when I would come to find out that my mom in fact didn't lie to the Pinole Senior Center about where she was staying. It's unfinished due to repeat hyperventilation in combination with writer's block for a problem that had persisted for nearly a decade at this point. But it does cover all the way to shortly after Easter last year, and I had written a bit for the gender politics chapter, as I mercifully had a good, consistent idea of what to say about the end of March. And believe me, I actually would have had plenty of good points with the gender politics. And yes, I would have indicated why I condemned Mangs, where I already didn't buy the allegations against Big Minion or especially Checker Conroy. It's also worth mentioning that I actually started writing the script back in August, before I eventually had to deal with waiting games and I focused more on Super Mario RPG and Kid Icarus Uprising. So I do have to point that the police brutality is not a private matter, and they supported the aforementioned 25% rent increase as well. Even without that, there are still underlying problems in the system. The maggot-filled toilet having existed at all is proof of that, and the same empathy from the community that allowed the damages inflicted to happen still persists in the bulk of the community to this day. I have already recognized that recovery of my dad's ashes was only going to be a step in the right direction, and things like community disconnect still have to be addressed. It's where persisting shows of mediocrity were so damaging in their own right. There were mistakes that I was making in procuring proper support, as I recognized in hindsight, but I was still to get proper support regardless. And if I had been given something to work with for better from local management, if I had been granted contact with somebody like the sympathizer much sooner, then I would have had far fewer problems. And people can't claim me to even be interested in subjecting the sympathizer to strain, because I can cite that the person I nicknamed Athena on the intended video script is, even with our own pity for being a couple of months from now, younger than her, and was showing a generally more vibrant personality. And I still called out so openly about how she had been overworked in a lifelessness. We have been needing a community that genuinely cares about these good-based actors and their adventures that practicality should aid instead of hinder. It's that simple. If my points get sufficiently signal boosted to people who can and would help combat issues similar to these possibly coming up in the future, then this video serves its still needed purpose. Then I'm just feeling a lot better now that the biggest problem in this 7-year nightmare has been properly addressed, and I can finally get back on track to making regular videos now that this problem is settled in general. I'll still mention it at the start of what I particularly have in mind, and that's getting promotion as well. But thank heavens this whole mess is starting to stabilize. And now I have some support from somebody local who actually cares.